among Gen X and Gen Y and millennials, the 50% rate, the research indicates about 50% are securely attached, and then 25% are avoidant, 20% are anxious, and about 5% are disorganized, the blend of the two, both blaming self and then also rejecting of others and pushing others away. So it's about 25% to 20%. And then, of course, most of those avoidants are men, most of those anxious are women. It gives you a clue just how many invisible avoidant men are walking among us.
Adam, what is attachment theory? Like, how would you define it to somebody that has maybe never heard of it before?
Frank, have you ever met somebody that just could not ease into trusting other people? When they talked to other people, they either thought that everyone was out to get them, or they felt like they themselves were inferior to everybody else, so they had to play an endless game. Have you seen someone do this before?
Not only have I seen it, but I think I lived it for probably the first 35 years of my life.
You're not alone. The research on this is funny. So baby boomers had about a 35% rate of them getting attachment wrong, where they had attachment issues. Millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z had about, Gen X rather, had a 50% rate of getting attachment issues where they had insecure attachment. And Gen Z today shows 65% have insecure attachment. So this is getting worse and worse and worse. So have you noticed that people in younger generations seem more insecure, more prone to emotional dysregulation, more inferiority complexes, but also more pushing back on other people, more hostile, more incapable of working together? Have you noticed this?
100%. I not just noticed it, but I think there's plenty of data and research that supports all of that.
That is attachment theory. Attachment theory says, why on earth are people losing the ability to connect with other human beings? Where are they going wrong? Okay. And attachment theory, done by John Bowlby back in the 1950s, says that attachment theory, according to him, draws from your first breath of life. Okay, your baby is born. They put you on mom. You hold on to mom, skin to skin contact. You feel so safe and warm. Mom holds you. Mom feeds you. Mom takes care of you. And then for the next couple of years, mom plays with you, talks to you, grows with you, helps you understand, teaches you that she will work with you on solving problems. Dad comes in. Dad starts teaching you that he's going to work with you when you are scared, that when you don't understand, Dad will help you and will guide you. He will mentor you. And then when you're a little kid and you have disagreements with parents, or you want something, or you try to figure out how the world works, they work with you. They don't enable you. They don't baby you and be permissive parents and try to be your best friend and be approval seeking. They also don't scream at you. They don't yell at you. They don't abandon you. They don't neglect you. You collaborate with your parents, and life becomes a collaboration to solve problems. Maybe you've met somebody that acts this way. Have you had a chance to meet somebody who collaborates like that openly with other people?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have good people in my life. Absolutely.
Good. That's wonderful. You have a 50% of the good population of people that are not just good, but secure, calm, collaborative. They learned in childhood that they can work with other people to make problems easier, to solve problems, to get better, right? They've learned that. That's why they behave that way. That's secure attachment. That's training from childhood. So you asked me, what is attachment theory? Attachment theory for the rest of us says that because our caregivers didn't give us what we needed, because they made us fight for anything, for resources, survival, because they made us feel like we didn't deserve those things, because they acted arbitrary or hurtful, because everything was scary to us and we had to learn to survive on our own, we can break. And the way that we break is in attachment, is the way we connect with other people. We stop collaborating. We don't even believe collaboration is possible. Either we go avoidantly attached. That's one style. Avoidantly attached says I'm a lone wolf. I'm a survivor. It's just me against the world. Nobody's coming to save me. It's pointless to even have emotions. I'm just going to drive towards success relentlessly, or I'm going to die. So I'm just going to make it work. Me against the world forever. That's avoidant attachment style. And the research shows it's primarily men who have that one. So if guys out there listening right now, if you're like, yeah, man, that's me, and that is how the world works, it's not a problem. Don't diagnose me. No, I'm not diagnosing, but it's a survival mechanism that can click on in a human brain to become avoidantly attached. Now, there's also the other way that we can break, anxious attachment style, which says something's wrong with me. I'm inferior. Everybody growing up saw it. That's why they treated me the way that they did. I have to earn approval from other people. I can't ask for what I want. I have to do 10 nice things, and maybe they'll pity me enough to give something to me so that I can get what I need. This is what's called nice guy syndrome. Dr. Robert Glover, he's a mentor of mine. He talks about nice guy syndrome in his book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And that is anxious attachment style. Fewer men have that one. Most of the men who break have avoidant attachment style. And there's so many things that go hand in hand with avoidant attachment style that we could talk about here today. But pause for a moment. Frank, is this resonating with you? Are you seeing guys like this out here in the world? I know that you coach. I know that you work with men.
Yeah, 100%. And, I'm glad you brought up Dr. Glover and one more, no more Mr. Nice Guy, not one more nice guy. We had Robert on the show a few years back, and I think it's probably time for us to reconnect with him because our audience has definitely grown. But that is a book I recommend to every young man that comes into any of our programs. So I think the shocking thing for me, Adam, here is when you share these statistics, 65% of Gen Z, 50% or more of the millennials or maybe that other generation, but 35% of boomers. What other factors other than the parents and upbringing? Because I think one thought is, right, okay, that makes sense, right? 44%, if you go back to like the 40s, 4% of children were born into a single parent household. And today I think the number is somewhere over 40%. And we've obviously seen the shattering of the nuclear family. We can talk about the fact that people are attached to their phones, probably makes it unable for them to attach to their children. I think that there's a lot of factors that would drive that. But I think that number 35% is shocking to me with the boomers. So what are some of these other factors that play into the development of our attachment style?
Man, the breaking of the nuclear family, the smartphones, all these are window dressing on the Titanic, man. The boat was already going down. So let me take you down this little rabbit hole. I've been studying attachment theory for over 15 years now. Let me take you down this rabbit hole. About 100 years ago, okay, let's say 1914, just prior to World War I outbreak. Okay, most Americans especially lived in rural areas. Now, this doesn't mean that rural areas are magically safe and wonderful and they keep you happy, but what it does mean is that most people were born and raised about 15 miles from the place they were born. They'd live their whole life and die about 15 miles from where they were born. There wasn't a lot of travel. So what that means is you have something called kith and kin networks. All the family and friends of family and family, everything connected to it, everybody that your family has ever known for generations all around you. You had your religious community was a massive support network for you as well. You had aunts and uncles and cousins and grandmas and everybody spread throughout. So if your parents didn't come through for you, you had a safety net of this expanded family network. You had all the other people in your village and your network and your tribe and your community and your everything tied in together. So you had 5 safety networks in case something went wrong with one and you didn't learn to collaborate and connect with other people. You would connect with the next net or the next safety net or the next safety net, and eventually people would catch you. The famous author J.R.R. Tolkien was raised by a Catholic priest because his family networks fell so far. Okay, now you can look back 100 years ago and we had those things. Then we had World War I, massive meat grinder, where not only did millions and millions and millions of men die, but the ones who came home were fundamentally changed and broken. They had the 1,000-yard stare before we talked about PTSD. Right? They had shell shock, where you would watch the guy next to you be liquefied by artillery shells that would explode into hundreds of pieces of shrapnel. And your best friend from growing up would become a cloud of red mist. They had just devastating impacts through World War I. It was phenomenal and horrific. And those men came home changed. They turned into what's called the lost generation. This is where we get Steinbeck. This is we get all the really depressed Hemingway, depressing American authors and things was from this generation, but not just America, Europe as well, right? The devastation of a generation of men, which then turned into massive decadence of the new generation growing up into the roaring 20s, which then collapsed into the Dust Bowl, the Great Depression, financial devastation. You look at the financial devastation through all of Europe at this time. And then You look at the rise of World War II. You see the greatest generation go back into war, another meat grinder, another generation of men destroyed, obliterated. You see women stepping into these roles because now masculinity dies. Masculinity in the West almost dies at this point, and women have to become the guardians of the household, and they shift into a masculine role to protect because men are gone. Men come home. If they do, they barely come home. They're checked out. They're existing. They're surviving. They're going day to day. We lose most of our parenting skills in this area right here. So parenting skills become survival skills. You get put into through the teens, the 20s, the 30s, the Industrial Revolution. Parents are working 100 hours a week. People don't realize that 180 to 100-hour work week was normal in that 100 years ago, before Ford came along and started the 40-hour work week and was sued by people like the Dodge company and said it's unsustainable for us for you to give your workers incentives and give them 40 hours a week with the same amount of pay. We demand that you put that pay back into the shareholders and keep making your people work 80 to 100 hours a week. Absolute obliteration of the family at this point. You lose your most Americans have to move from the cities, the rural areas, into the cities at this point, from the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, everything. So now you have a massive population not just moving into cities, not cities equal bad, but they lose their kith and kin networks. They lose all those networks. They're separated from the land where they've grown up. There's no more generational connection to where they've been, so they lose all the networks. We have the shift away from religious faith, which obliterates the religious connections, right? So now you've lost your expanded family network. You've lost your kith and kin network. You've lost your village network. You've lost your tribal identity. You've lost all of your religious connection. All you have left is the nuclear family. But by the time the boomers come along, the silent generation, the greatest generation, have no parenting skills. They have survival skills. So some of the boomers took those harsh parenting methods and said, I get it. My parents love me. I'm going to keep trying and we're going to keep driving. But a lot of boomers did not, and said, screw you. If you hate me, then I hate you worse. They jumped in their mobile sex wagons, the cars, and they went around having sex with as many people as they could. They got into shotgun marriages. Their first round of marriages were a disaster. They had Gen Y and Gen X, and Gen Y and Gen X were raised to believe in family values that now didn't exist anymore. They were just standing there like deer in the headlights, raised for a world that no longer exists. The baby boomers broke up. First round of marriage said marriage isn't enough. Love isn't enough. Sometimes love just doesn't work. There's a message that devastated a whole generation. Sometimes love just isn't enough. Who cares? We'll just move on. They move on into their second round of marriages. They're currently tripling the divorce rates, even in their 70s and 80s, by the way. But they move into their second round of marriages, have the millennial generation, and they say, I'm going to raise my kids to be tough. They won't be weak like my first batch of kids. And the second batch of kids hate the baby boomers. So you have the war between millennials and baby boomers. Millennials have never really seen a functioning family unit. Many of them are from second marriages now, or they are part of the early wave leading into a second marriage. Many of them are used to affairs. They're used to families being devastated. They were raised by moms that said, don't ever trust men. Men will betray and abandon you. They're raised by men that say, your mom was X, Y, and Z. Women are disgusting. Just go have fun while you can. Only trust your job. And these people all been raised to trust corporations to take care of them. Okay. Fast forward, the millennials are now the most likely generation to want to have kids and the least likely generation to have kids. But for those that manage to have children, they have Gen Z, who has been raised in the rubble of a society. But the research is showing that the attachment issues are getting worse, right? And they are not understanding what family values even are. They've never seen a functioning family system. They've never seen any of the 5 safety nets at all, including a nuclear family. It's an abnormality if a set of parents is actually married and still together, and they assume something is secretly evil going beyond the scenes that has kept them together. Otherwise, that wife would have left long ago. Why would a couple stay together? This is strange. It must be some sort of weird voodoo curse on that family that they've stayed together. It's an abnormality now. So you see that, and they are raised in the rubble of that society. This is what's going on. Now we have Generation Alpha, born after Gen Z, the youngest ones. They're being raised by tablets. They don't even have functioning family systems. The generations above them are looking at them going, good luck. I hope you manage to survive. And everybody has checked out into dopamine binging. This is the society that we're living in. So when you ask me about attachment issues, how are we functioning? Man, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. I'll pause for breath. Have you seen many of those things that I just talked about? Is that resonating with your experience?
Every single bit of what you just shared there, right? From the beginning with the death of masculinity, I heard bits and traces of feminism kind of being at a root of some of this, the sexual revolution, I think in the late 60s, early 70s. It's not about the family, it's about me. all of that. You know, you mentioned the Generation Alpha. That's a newer term, I think, for me. Is there a projection model like that you've seen? If we're at 65% of Gen Z right now that is in the insecure, what does this next wave look like? Are we getting into the 80, 90% insecure at that point?
It's catastrophic. That's all I can say right now. So we've only begun to just barely do research on Generation Alpha. It's their attention spans seem to be really poor. They're mostly being raised by tablets. They're just diving into it. We don't really know what to expect with them yet. We're still trying to catch up on Gen Z, by the way. The oldest Gen Z people are 23 years old. We're still trying to figure them out. And they mostly want to be left alone. They want us to leave them alone. They're actually, the research shows they're one of the most conservative generations of all time, back to the silent generation. And that doesn't mean socially conservative, like they want to go backwards in time, 1950s kind of thing, which isn't backwards in any way. 1950s was an abnormality that shouldn't have existed. It's not traditional. But they're conservative, meaning leave me the hell alone, stay away from me. Government, get out of my business. Let me run my own business. Let me start a business and be an entrepreneur, and then keep everyone at arm's length. I will survive. Everyone get away from me, right? That kind of conservative. That's what Gen Z seems to be marked by, which again is more avoidant attachment style. We're seeing a massive rise of avoidant attachment style, which is a survival adaptation to help humanity through really bad cataclysms.
When you say it's the rise in the avoidant, you said previously that was the number one for men with the anxious. Primarily, what are the percentages of there? Because, and maybe I'm biased due to the work that I do, that a lot of the men that come into my world do struggle with this nice guy syndrome. So I guess in terms of men, what are the percentages there from avoidant to the anxious?
That was something that took me a long time to reconcile as well. A lot of the guys I worked with initially were all anxiously attached men, the nice guys, right? The Nice Guy book resonated so hard from Dr. Glover. And a key element to remember is this. Anxious attachment style, it's built on the idea that men are inferior. These guys are inferior. They have to earn approval. They have to wag their tail and make mommy happy. That's what anxious attachment style is built on. Okay. So when we look the other direction, avoidantly attached men, these guys are the ones that they look like they have it all together. Most of my guys that come in for coaching for avoidant attachment style, they're entrepreneurs. Some of them run $100 million businesses. They're executives at the top of their game. They're the guys you look at them and say, that guy's crushing it. There's the guy that's got a different supermodel girlfriend every week, right? They're the Bruce Waynes of the world, right? They're the top performer guys that climb. They have no drama in their life. They don't let anyone tell them what to do. And most guys look at him and say, that guy's got it together. But he goes home, he drinks. He's got his next girlfriend. He just can't wait to get rid of her, can't wait to get away from her. He can't open up. He can't relax. He can't calm down. His whole life is one endless stress point. He never, ever, ever stops feeling stressed, ever. And he always feels alone. And he always wonders what the point of life is because he's always in survival mode. That's why those guys are invisible to most of the rest of us. We can see the nice guys, right? Because they're usually not functioning quite that high. Some of them are, but they're usually not functioning quite that high. They don't have the ruthless climb mentality. These guys do. These are the guys we root for, and we don't realize they're destroying themselves on the inside. So the research is fascinating. Among Gen X and Gen Y and millennials, the 50% rate, the research indicates about 50% are securely attached, and then 25% are avoidant, 20% are anxious, and about 5% are disorganized, the blend of the two, both blaming self and then also rejecting of others and pushing others away. So it's about 25% to 20%. And then, of course, most of those avoidants are men. Most of those anxious are women. It gives you a clue just how many invisible avoidant men are walking among us.
Yeah. So a disorganized style would be kind of a hybrid of the avoidant and anxious.
Some people have called it fearful avoidant. I don't like that classification. There's anxious, there's avoidant, and then there's cannot be neatly organized, which means disorganized. You're blended into the two. And I've actually found two different types of disorganized. One is extremely, like, I go out, it's the guys that saturate girls with like, I love you, you're amazing, you're incredible. And the moment she loves him back, he pulls back. And he's out. Like the moment he gets love in return, it makes his skin crawl and he's got to run. And then he regrets it later and he leaves a trail of broken hearts, but he's just as brokenhearted himself. He doesn't understand why he keeps running away from love. That's a bit more the disorganized style. The avoidant guys are more likely to get in, they connect, they try to give the other girl good feelings. Maybe they kind of bomb her with good feelings at the beginning, and then it goes on and they get a lot of dopamine. But about 7 months in, they're like, man, I'm just not feeling anything. Why is my happiness diminished while I'm giving her everything? And then she starts pushing for commitment because she's bonding properly. He's not getting a bonding hormone called oxytocin. Avoidant men, your brain actually turns off the oxytocin with high levels of cortisol. So your reception is blocked. You won't receive the oxytocin you need, which cuts down your GABA, cuts down your melatonin, cuts down your serotonin release as well. From behavioral patterns, and then your brain chemistry is shifted continuously into a cortisol and dopamine pathway where you're endlessly on cortisol, massively high cortisol, and only bring it down enough, like coolant into the reactor by bringing in dopamine. These guys are massive high performance, but never truly happy about anything ever. That's what I continuously keep saying.
No, and as you're unpacking this and talking about the guys that are coming in with avoidant into your work, I'm thinking about kind of the two sectors of men that we work with, right? There's that nice guy, that anxious, right? He's never maybe even had an intimate relationship, started watching pornography as a 12-year-old boy, never developed the skills to create real meaningful connections, spends his life between pornography, video games, and fantasy football, lives in his mom's basement, doesn't, has no real motivational pursuits to kind of go out there and accomplish the world. That's one segment of guy that we work with. But we have just as many guys that, like you described, are building the world that we all get to operate in, right? These high-level entrepreneurs, public figures, pro athletes, like the guy that on the outside, and this was me, on the outside looks like he has it all together, but then he's masking everything at night, whether it's in drugs, sex, alcohol, or pornography, or a combination of those things, right? It's got me thinking, right? You talked about the Bruce Lane, the lone wolf kind of guy. There's a massive movement online. You're in the online content space, right? There's this red pill community, right? It's like go out there, make your money, build your body, and then the reward you get for that is not one meaningful, intimate relationship, but a lot of surface level relationships. What role is the red pill community playing, I think, in any of this? And speak to that a little bit if you can.
How hard do you want me to go with the red pill community?
Go as hard as you want to.
Okay. The red pill community, as led by guys like Rollo Tomasi with The Rational Male, Ryan Stone, looking at guys in that vein of the red pill community. It is designed with the idea that every single woman on the planet has borderline personality disorder. And so it justifies treating them like subhuman creatures that are livestock for the purpose of sexual pleasure. It pulls in men who have anxious attachment style who feel inferior, or men who have avoidant attachment style but don't want to manipulate anybody else, so they're just kind of like frozen in time, never really connecting with anybody. And it says all women are going to hurt you. You deserve sexual pleasure. Here's what you're going to do to grow yourself. And they teach a juvenile masculinity. Okay. Masculinity is trying to emerge again. It was fledgling. It was reborn. Women sheltered it. Now they're becoming juvenile masculine. I'm going to emerge from the feminine shadow and become a fully masculine man. But of course, it's teenage juvenile masculinity, Andrew Tate model. And then it is, I will never trust a woman ever because she'll smother me with her feelings and use me and attack me. So I will use them instead. And it's the idea that you are livestock to me. I will be a benevolent livestock owner, and I will use you the way that I intend because this is the only system available to me. It negates the possibility of emotional intimacy or trust or real bonding. And instead of anxious attachment, it fosters the most manipulative avoidant attachment possible. It does not fix the problem. It merely shifts the problem and then creates new pain for everybody involved. That's the red pill community.
I'm glad we're there. I'm glad we're here right now. Because I come across so many men, Adam, like they're like, I fell into it, right? You get a anxious guy that feels like he doesn't have a place in the world. You have these polarizing figures online that are, bringing in certain types of women, and then they're combative, and then they seem to have some level of authority. And it's like, these guys got it all together. What's interesting is I had Rich Cooper on the podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with Rich. Entrepreneurs in Cars was his big kind of breakthrough YouTube channel. And, I think at one point, I don't even know where he would kind of line himself up. Rich and I agree on certain things. There's a lot of things that we don't agree on. One thing he said is behind the scenes. I think he's had a glimpse behind the scenes into these characters, these guys that are online. I really think that's what they are. They're characters that they're playing online. Tate being, probably the most successful one of them all. He said a lot of them aren't good men and they don't know how to be good at being a man. And it was just so shocking, right? It's like, and that's the challenge with the internet today. And the challenge with this content is anybody can go online with a microphone and some cameras and lights behind them and just preach like they have it all kind of figured out. But like at their core, at their essence, like they're not sharing an authentic version of who they are. And I think a guy that is anxious and is lost in this world and didn't have a father figure and didn't have a leader, didn't have a coach, didn't have a mentor in his life, he sees somebody like that and he can quickly latch on and be like, that's my guy. And then I've had so many guys that have gone down that model, right? They're like, I had all the success in the world. I was making all the money. I was building my business. And I felt like I deserved all the sexual access that online was telling me. And then they get to the bottom of that pit and it's empty. It's empty inside.
I have hope that a lot of the red pill guys, even the gurus, are trying to work their way through, right? Masculinity is emerging. It popped out of its egg. It was a weak little fledgling. Women took care of it, but a lot of women were angry and confused and frightened and tried to smother it. Other women tried to shelter it. We grew up into juvenile masculinity. I remember popping out into the red pill circles and masculinity about 12 years ago. I remember reading Roosh V, if you remember him from way back in the day. And he was hardcore, like, women, you need to be banging these number of women. They'll do worse to you if they get the chance, blah, blah, blah. And I remember reading some of his stuff on masculinity and thinking, okay, he takes a good stance on ownership, self-discipline, right? A lot of good things like that. But this stuff about women is evil. And I was thinking, like, this is like, what do we do for these guys? And Roosh V, ever since, for anyone who doesn't know his story, he's had a tremendous, overwhelming conversion where he has said, my stuff on masculinity was fairly good. My stuff on women was evil. And he has unpublished his books, destroyed his economic empire that he was benefiting from, and has had a full religious conversion where he's now trying to live a much, much more masculine, but spiritual and moral life instead. So I have hope that a lot of these guys are going to change. I saw not that long ago a clip of Tate, people asking him about love and marriage. And he said, I'm wondering if I've maybe been wrong about it all this time. So I think there's hope, right? There's an emerging movement in the world right now about mature masculinity, okay? Grown, mature masculinity. People ask me all the time, and Frank, I'd love to get your take on this. People ask me, where does masculinity come from? How do you define it? And I say that the core of masculinity, the beginning phase, even the juvenile phase, really it springs from personal sovereignty. You must have total personal sovereignty, which means control over your emotions, control over your finances, control over your freedom, control over your own safety, right? You have to be fully personal sovereign. No master, no slave relationship with anything. You cannot be even governed by your own fear, your attachment problems. You have to master them. But what is the purpose then? Okay. Masculinity finds its base, its root is in personal sovereignty, but its fullness, its maturity is in servantship to other people, service to others. You can only serve your family when you are personally sovereign and can provide for that family. Okay. Masculinity has a purpose. It's not masturbatory. Juvenile masculinity is masturbatory. I think that we are finally evolving beyond that masturbation cycle into the fullness of mature masculinity and servanthood into our families, our communities. You are serving men every single day here on this podcast and your work with men. You are serving others, but it has sprung from your personal sovereignty. What do you think of that? Am I on base or am I off?
I would agree wholeheartedly with exactly what you shared there. And I think for me, just a great example, a personal example would be kind of my journey as a man, right? Struggling with a pornography addiction, feeling like I was chasing the success that the world told me was meaningful, right? Build a great physique, make a lot of money, acquire a lot of material things, sleep with a lot of women, right? Like that was the juvenile kind of masculinity. And it's like, that wasn't what I saw at home. That was what I saw the world telling me was the most important. But you get to the top of those mountains and then it's emptier than it was at the bottom. And I think taking personal responsibility, and for me, a big conversion of this, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is the spiritual conversion. So I came to Christ, I gave my life to Christ at 35 years old. Had I had it maybe at 18, 19, maybe the 20s and 30s would have played out a little bit different for me. But I think the sovereignty or the responsibility for me came in that conversion, right? And you gave that other example of, I forgot his name there, but you gave the big guy that was in the red pill community, like his conversion was spiritually rooted. And I think some of the emergence that we're seeing with, and I don't know if the numbers support this, but I think what I see online is you see these male leaders that are now stepping more boldly out in their faith, right? And I think that gives us the sovereignty, the responsibility, but it also gives us purpose, right? When you believe that you were created in an image of God and you were placed here at this point in time of this entire universe, there gives you purpose and meaning to your life. And I think so many men that don't have that in their life struggle with that purpose, struggle with that meaning. Why am I here? Because God chose you to be here right now. God chose you at this point, in this time, with these skills, with these adversities, in this situation. There's a meaning behind that. So I'm not sure I'm going to be able to articulate the question exactly. I think you got it, though, is like, what role is our faith and maybe our spiritual life playing in how we kind of fall into some of these categories, I guess?
I'm going to answer you in maybe a roundabout kind of way. When you were a young boy, maybe a young teen, and you'd play a board game or play a game with another guy, or a game of catch, or even a video game or something like that, you'd play a game with a guy with weak moral character, and he'd maybe cheat at that game, or he'd be a jerk about it. He'd do all kinds of stupid shenanigans, screw up the game, anything in order to win, right? He would do anything necessary to win at that stupid little game, even if it meant destroying his relationship with you in the process. Did you meet some of these guys when you were young? I sure did.
Mm-hmm. Of course, yeah.
And what happens when that game is over? He wins, and then what happens?
Probably not going to play with him again.
Yeah. Did you ever get in a fist fight with those guys? Did you ever get in a pushing match or yelling match with those guys after the game?
Oh, we're going way back. I don't think I've been in a fist fight in 20 something plus years, but yeah, as a little boy, teenager, for sure.
Yeah. So he has so focused in on the little game he's playing right now that he has forgotten that game is placed in a much larger context, with a much larger game being played in a much larger field and full relationship connections and everything that he has utterly missed. I think that when men focus in solely on the physical world that's in front of you, it's like you focusing in on that game of Monopoly or that game of checkers or whatever, and you're going to cheat and push and everything you can to win that one little game, as if that game matters more than anything else. Now, at the end of the game, everything goes back in the box, and what are you left with? You're left with the relationships of the human beings around you that you built. This is why when I've got guys at age 75, 78, even up into their 80s coming into my coaching practice, the reason they come in is not, well, Adam, I want to bang more chicks. Well, Adam, I want to sleep with this trophy model. Well, this girl over here isn't quite doing what I want to do. How do I make her do it? No, the guys come in and they say, Adam, I have neglected my relationships my entire life. I'm 78 years old. I'm terminally ill. I have one son. He barely speaks to me, and I cannot go out of the world like this. I've had everything a man is ever supposed to want, and I am more miserable than I've ever been. And it's not, I can't wait to die, but at the same time, I can't leave no legacy at all. I can't do this. What do I do? Help me. Guys forget that at the end of the game, everything goes back in your box, and what you're left with is the human impact that you have created. So men out there right now need to be asking themselves, I don't care if you're 12 years old, I don't care if you're 78 years old, what human impact have you left? Do you even have the capacity to leave a human impact? If you have broken attachment, you are not collaborating with anyone. You are manipulating people, whether gently or roughly. You are manipulating other people with your actions. You're pushing buttons. You're afraid all the time. You're ruining your relationships. Come 78 years old, you're going to be calling me up and say, Adam, what the hell do I do? Please help me. I have no legacy. Or your legacy is going to be one you don't like. You're going to be watching your kids go through one divorce after another. You're going to be watching your kids overdose on drugs. You're going to have, broken marriages, and everything is a disaster. And you just watch your kids and grandkids fall apart around you if you even have them. So don't do that. I get plenty of guys in at 65 who don't have kids. And they say, Adam, My life has been wasted. I have no legacy. And I say, absolutely not. That is crap. You just haven't built the right relationships yet to foster the next generation, to grow the next generation, to leave a legacy. Let's talk about your legacy. In a couple of sessions, we can turn them around. It's amazing. It's amazing how just a couple of key moments where you make some changes in your life and you start investing in the next generation properly. It's amazing what that can do for your mindset and your mentality. But you've got to have secure attachment to be able to do it. Otherwise, you won't form the right relationships.
Adam, I think one of the things that draws me to your work, and I think we're on parallel paths, serving men in different ways, but it is that message of hope that you were just describing. I mean, the fact that a guy at 75, right, is coming to you and saying, hey, I may have 10 years left if I'm lucky, right? It's like, what can I do now? We've had guys in our program in their mid to late 60s. I'm not sure if I've had anybody in 70s. Maybe I know I've had conversation with guys that were seeking help. Maybe we weren't able to convert them. Maybe I need to hire one of your sales guys to help me close those older guys. But anyways, the message of hope, right? And I think that comes down to how you position yourself in the marketplace, right? I think one thing that you talk about in terms of how you work with people is it's not this traditional therapy approach. You've used the language coaching. That's what we do here is we coach. We help you establish a vision for the future and build an actionable plan to help you become the man that can make that vision a reality for your life. So how does the work, like the coaching that you do, compare to a traditional therapy approach? And then let's get tactical if we can here with maybe a little bit of time that we have, that if these guys are in that avoidance, anxious, how they begin to move and position themselves into a secure attachment.
I love that. I get this question all the time. How is therapy and coaching different? I was a licensed marriage and family therapist for many, many years. I worked with everybody. I worked with death penalty inmates who'd committed multiple murders. I worked with high level CEOs, big trust fund families, and blue collar families, everybody in between. I love therapy. Okay. But when does an athlete go to therapy versus when does an athlete hire a coach? An athlete goes to therapy when he has an injury, and it's a diagnosable injury, and he needs to be brought back to functioning level. Okay, bring me back to functioning level from the diagnosis I have. That is what therapy is designed to do. So if you have a full diagnosis, by all means, go to therapy and get that treated. Now, if you want to break a record, break a personal record, overcome a boundary, overcome an obstacle, if you want information from someone who's been there before, someone who is trained to help you achieve that next level, that's when an athlete hires a coach. And that's what coaching is. It's not let's get you back to neutral, and it's not how do you feel today. It is what do you want to achieve? Here are the steps to achieve it. I will walk with you and make it simple for you, but you're going to do the work. Let's get you there and let's help you achieve. That's what coaching is for. I think every man on the planet needs a coach. I don't think every man on the planet needs therapy.
I love that. So getting into, if we can here, I know this might be challenging, right? Because it's obviously going to be case independent. Yeah, if the guy is resonating with every single bit of this, which there's going to be so many of them that do, they've identified, they probably already knew, right? Even coming to this, I'm the nice guy, right? I'm anxious all the time, or I'm that lone wolf. I'm that, I'm crushing it and all these kind of things. Look at my resume, right? I got the BMW parked out front. I'm living in a high-rise building, could walk into any restaurant and don't even have to look at the menu and be able to buy whatever it is that I want. So he's that more avoidant because when he goes home at night, he's sitting in this beautiful high-rise apartment all by himself, and he has for years. So if they're not anxious or avoidant, but they want to move into the secure, first thing that he should begin to do.
Yep. I'm going to give 2 steps for each one. Okay, 2 key steps for each one. In my video course, the Attachment Bootcamp, it guides people through fixing their anxious attachment style. And here's the 2 opening steps that men need to know. I'm just going to give it to you. Number 1, you need to learn to regulate your own emotions. You cannot do anything better than you're currently doing until you regulate your emotions. This doesn't mean not having feelings, but it means taking all those times that you overthink, all those times that you are paralyzed by fear, all the things that stop you from saying the things you need to say. Okay. It is based on emotional agitation. It's on your right side brain. That diminishes the functioning on your logical left side brain to fuel these emotional spikes. And then it says, how do I maximize pleasure and minimize pain for the next 5 seconds? If you're anxiously attached, that means by getting approval from somebody and getting a little flood of a bonding hormone called oxytocin. When someone approves of you, you feel accepted, you get oxytocin, you wag your tail, you feel a little safer. That's how you're regulating your emotions. You're co-regulating with other people, but they don't know that's what you're doing and you're desperately seeking it. It makes you look weak. You don't like it. They don't like it. It it makes you feel disrespectful of them. They feel that they cannot respect you because you're driven by fear. Regulate your own emotions. Number one way to do this through physical techniques. That can be lifting. Exercise is huge for this. Somatic body techniques. I teach a variation of the progressive muscle relaxation technique that involves tightening muscles instead of relaxing them. That's been huge for my clients who have panic attacks and things like this. But regulate your own emotions so that you can then, number two, define and live by your own code of honor, your own code of conduct. You must define 3 core principles that you are never going to violate again, that you probably are currently violating. Mine are honesty, always tell the truth and the fullness of truth. Number 2, integrity, always keep your word no matter what, keep your responsibilities. And number 3, compassion, always do what is truly best for those who are suffering. Those are my 3 principles I must live by. You have to set out reminders every morning that you're going to live by these things. You have to breathe them, think them, sleep them, talk about them, tell them to other people, get updates on them, be held accountable for them. But you must live to your code of conduct instead of deciding what's going to minimize friction and make people around me happy. When you do that, you start crushing the heart and soul of your anxious attachment, and you'll start working towards secure attachment. Now, there's more to it, but those are the opening steps that I lay out for most men for anxious attachment. So nice guys, there's your beginning steps. Take those steps. Let me know if you need more. Avoidantly attached guys, opposite problem. Okay, opposite problem. They don't usually need to regulate their own emotions. They need to believe that there's even another way to live besides the one they're living. So most avoidant men, they go home, right? They're out all day fighting in the fields. They're covered in bloody armor. They got their bloody spear. They go home. They walk in their front door. They still bloody armor, bloody spear. They kiss their wife or their girlfriend hello. They walk in. They sit on the couch, bloody armor, bloody spear. They kind of watch TV. They get up. They go to the dinner table. They eat, still all covered in blood with their armor on. They go. They make love to their girlfriend or their wife. And then they lay in bed all night long, bloody armor and bloody spear, just eyes peeled back, waiting for the dawn. They can't even sleep. They get up in the morning, they go brush their teeth, eat a bagel, kiss their girlfriend goodbye, go to work. And same thing. They never, ever, ever relax. They never unwind. They never let go because they don't know how. They're always endlessly on that cortisol pathway. They usually only come into me when they either hear that there's a different way to live and they kind of believe it, or they crash somehow and they're just wretchedly unhappy and they need a different way of living. So number one, understand that there's a different way to live for avoidant men. Even just drink this idea in. You don't have to understand. You don't have to believe it yet. Most guys hear me. They circle me for 6 months waiting to see how I'm a charlatan. When they don't figure it out, they come in and talk to me, and then we start working on attachment at that point. But it's 6 months usually of circling to figure out if I'm lying to them. Do some work, do some research, learn about oxytocin in particular. There's a fantastic researcher you should look up, Dr. Sue Carter from the Kinsey Institute. Dr. Sue Carter, phenomenally brilliant woman. She talks about the bonding pathways of oxytocin and vasopressin, especially in the context of fear and love. This is groundbreaking research that every man out there needs to be researching, but especially avoidant men. You will see how your brain chemistry is off. So number one, be aware that there's a different way to live. And number two, learn the 4 levels of trust. The 4 levels of trust indicate who you can trust and who you can't. Most avoidant men simply never trust anybody because they're used to being let down. Everybody else seems arbitrary and like they're not going to work out. So just don't ever trust anybody ever. When you learn the 4 levels of trust, is that person consistent and self-policing with their internal values, their code of conduct? And they tell you what that is. It's level 1. Level 2, are they consistent and self-policing with a long-term goal, right? That's number 2, and a goal that you can respect. That makes them predictable. During times of stress, do they still hold to those? When they fall short, do they self-police back? Are they always on those 2 things so you can predict what they're going to do instead of them backstabbing you, betraying you, wandering off the path, doing something horribly wrong? They're always going to police back to those 2 things so you can at least trust them. Then number 3, do they take ownership of their shortcomings and help you understand what they will be and then help minimize any damage that you're going to take from their shortcomings while also accepting your shortcomings? They don't enable you, but they accept you for who you are and then work with you as you overcome them and hold you accountable to them. Okay. And then number 4, can they build a mutually fulfilling relationship with you where it's truly open, explicit? Here's what I need from you. Here's what you need from me. Let's take care of each other in generosity, but only because we have all those levels of trust. As those avoidant men go through those 4 levels of trust, you actually rank the people in your life. You give them a number. You see who you can go up on and who does not deserve that, who's level 0. Most people are level 0. Everyone is level 0 when they start. You don't give them the benefit of the doubt. Everyone's level 0. They have to work their way up. You only trust or marry a woman person, for example, when she's level 4. You only make somebody your business partner when they're at least level 3, hopefully level 4. That's an intimate friendship or an intimate connection. Learn the 4 levels of trust and rank the people in your life. Again, there's more to it than that, learning to open up to them, learning to bond with them, but begin in those 2 places. Those are the 2 steps I'd give to anxious or avoidant men.
Yeah, that's great. And guys, we're going to link all of Adam's work down below, his sites, his socials. Definitely check him out. I mean, he's pumping content out at a phenomenal rate, some of the top-notch quality in this space. I mean, very rarely do you get a true professional, right? Somebody that spent a career working in the field. A lot of us, right? It's like we had a personal journey experience. We kind of figure some things out, and then we seek out the professionals like you, and then we kind of contextualize it and make it kind of our own. Like, here's somebody that's like studied this, has put in the work. So we'll have all that linked down there in the show notes. But that is great. I mean, first 2 steps, right? This will hopefully bypass at least 2 to 3 months of these guys circling you for 6 months before they decide, hey, Adam's my guy. I'm going to need to get into his work. I think defining and living by the code of honor, right? Like that was where like that question was kind of rooted, I think, previously around the spiritual transformation, right? Like there's a book of values and principles to kind of live your life by. And I'm not telling anybody that they need to do what I've done in my life, but if there's the step for you, Adam, what is it that drives you, right? You know, I think if you look at the data, if you look at some of the stats out there, it could be doom and gloom, right? You know, it's like if you look at the world, it's like you mentioned you live on a ranch, right? You live out there on a farm. Like you could easily kind of tuck yourself away. And I'm sure, you know, you made a great living. You probably could have stayed in your practice. What's driving you to do the work that you're doing?
8 years ago, I held my first child in my arms. It's my son. And I held him in my arms and I looked at him. He was just this weak, wrinkly little like monkey lizard. And he couldn't eat. He couldn't talk. He couldn't do anything. And he was entirely dependent on me for everything in life. And I knew how awful this world can be. I'd been working with death penalty inmates, murderers, rapists, child mutilators, and then cases where men had been destroyed by the women they trusted. I looked around at all the people around me and I said, you know, I'm safe. And I can keep him safe for the first 15 years. But where's he going to go? What's he going to do? Who's he going to love? Who's he going to talk to and work with? And I held him in my arms and I made a promise that I would not let him walk into a world that he couldn't thrive in. And that meant that I had to go fix that world ahead of him, that I have to walk ahead of him and do everything in my power to make this world a place that he can grow and thrive in, so that when he goes beyond me, he meets people like you, Frank. He meets people like you who are out there on their mission. He meets men he can trust. He meets women he can trust. He meets friends and good people who are doing the work to make the world a better place, so that he can grow and thrive and fight and win in this world. That's my job, is to go before my children and pave the way so that they can live a better life than any of us have had. That's why I'm doing this.
I love that, man. And we're all benefiting from it. And, you know, we talked about hope and, you know, peace before we hit record here. You know, I think the peace that I experience and the hope that I see, right? Because I speak with men that are hopelessness. You know, they struggle to find meaning. They feel like the world is against them, right? You know, same type of conversations that you were having on a daily basis. What enables me to wake up every single day and attack the work and do it from a place where I can, at the end of the night, feel peace is that same thing, right? It's like we are changing the world. And the more and more I do this and connect with guys like yourself that are having real massive impact, man, just fills that cup of hope up even more, man. So grateful for today's conversation. I mean, this has just been a true masterclass, man. I'd love to have you back on, because I think that there's so much more that we could get into. But as we wrap it up, we'd love to end every conversation here with the same question, Adam. How would you define living a superhuman life?
The only thing you get to take to heaven with you is people. So what is your human impact? If you want to leave a superhuman legacy, then you need to have fully human relationships. And that means secure attachment.
I love that, man. I love it. Guys, connect with Adam. All of his links are plugged down there in the show notes. I know you got some free resources there as well. So we'll make sure to get the guys into your world. But I love you, brother. I truly mean that, man. And just 55 minutes here spending with you today, man. I've developed a And I could say
Secure
that
bond.
securely,
A secure
right?
bond,
I can say that securely in who I am, man. God bless you, man. This has been amazing. Guys, share this episode. Rate it, review it, do all that stuff that we ask you at the end of these things. But for Adam Lane Smith, your host, Coach Frank Rich, we love you guys. We'll see you in the next one.